Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Kayla Lords.
John Brownstone.
Of Loving BDSM, where we help kicksters like you have happy, healthy power exchange relationships. We are back for another Kinky Book Club month for us to learn, to read, to grow, sometimes to get turned on. Books are involved. So books are part of our happy, healthy power exchange relationship. They might be for you. This month we are talking about an anthology called Sweet and Rough, Queer Kink Erotica, written and edited by Sinclair Sexsmith. You may know them from a site called Sugar Butch, lots of kink education, very kinky person just in general, as we will get into in a moment. A damn fine erotic writer.
Yeah.
So we're reading Sexy Fun Times, and somebody's going to go, what does that have to do with happy, healthy power exchange relationships? Well, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I kind of started figuring out I was kinky by consuming fictional media. So there was movies that I watched. There was also lots and lots of erotica that I read. Because I didn't even always know that, oh, this is kinky if it wasn't labeled as such. I just knew this seems a little bit different than what I'm used to in the bedroom, and also it is a turn on.
Right. It gives you a safe way to explore things that you find you may like or don't like.
Exactly. It lets you fantasize and then kind of maybe later go, is that a fantasy I'd like to make real? Is that just going to live in my head? So yes, for Kinky Book Club and Happy Healthy Power Exchange Relationships, we include fiction. And this month is an anthology of fiction. So let us talk about it. Because it's fiction, but it's an anthology, there's no spoilers, but also there's 16 stories, and that's a lot, even though they're pretty quick reads. So I think what we'll do is what we did for a previous anthology that was part of Kinky Book Club, is that we'll just talk about our favorite stories. I can honestly say I did not dislike any of them.
Same here. They were all good in their own way.
Even if it wasn't my favorite, there's nothing negative I could say about any one of them. But let's talk about the anthology first. Okay. So the book was recommended to us for Kinky Book Club. And I just kind of went, okay, sure, that sounds good. And I had seen it on Amazon and kind of added it to my wish list. I was like, okay, that sounds good. But clearly I didn't pay enough attention. So I thought that every story was written by a different author and then edited by Sinclair. What I found out when I read the very first page, did not just immediately go into the smut, was actually these were ideas and prompts and nuggets of stories provided to Sinclair by their blog followers and online followers that they turned into short little sexy fantasy stories on their blog back in between 2007 and 2009. Which, that made me go, wow, okay, I am not an old sex writer on the internet. That is very nice to know. I mean, I know people predate me, obviously, but it was also like, oh, good. That's a long time ago. So what that meant, though, and it was sort of surprising to me, but I was not disappointed in it, was that every story got Sinclair in it.
Yes.
Now, whether that is who they were between 2007 and 2009 or a fantasy version of themselves, don't know, doesn't matter. The stories were good. But that was a little bit of a surprise to me, which is my fault for not investigating further. I even went back into Goodreads and was looking. I was like, oh, it doesn't. It kind of implies that these are all Sinclair-focused stories in the blurb. I just wasn't paying attention. But what I actually ended up liking that, because once I realized, wait, these are written from Sinclair's perspective, and they describe themselves as a queer, kinky, butch person. I'm gonna screw that up. I'm sure of those words. That they even put in one story that they play with gender and they fetishize certain parts of gender.
Yes.
And that became kind of clear. I'm gonna put air quotes around that because if it might not be clear to everybody, but I started getting that vibe clearly, easily halfway through. But what I ended up liking about that is that because it was Sinclair's viewpoint all the way through for all these different stories that weren't connected to one another, Sinclair was the connection point. And I felt like I was in their mind through each story, and I really liked that.
Yeah, I enjoyed the stories. I loved that perspective.
Oh yeah, a top/dom perspective, I mean, I'll just read that all day long.
Right.
I want to get in your head and see the world through your eyes.
Oh, that's scary.
I don't want to be you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very happy in my little S place, but I love feeling like I understand the thought processes of a top or a dom, especially in sexy, kinky moments, because it's like, I want to know how the wheels are turning up there. And in a lot of the stories, that was exactly what we got, because Sinclair is a top dom. And that was even in stories where it didn't start out with them being the one kind of in charge, it always at some point flipped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just liked in each story, even when it was in the middle of the hottest, sexiest moment, we were still hearing their thoughts, and they're like, oh, this is what she's doing over there. This is what is happening over here. And here's how I think and feel about that. And I like that.
Yes. I'm going to say this. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I really liked, right from the beginning of the book, the way the author explained, this is erotic fiction. Suspend your belief of what consent and aftercare and different things,
and also kind of expect that happened off screen, like certain situations, all of that conversation part, go ahead and assume it happened over here,
right?
Because I, as the author, know it's supposed to happen, and that's what I believe. But erotica is fantasy, fiction is fantasy, and sometimes you're allowed to sort of stretch what's allowable because it's fantasy.
Right. And I really liked that they explained that, because so much erotic fiction is just, thrown at you, and you can sit there and read it and you're like, oh, no, that's not the way this should be.
Right.
The author says, this is erotic fiction, read it for what it is, but understand, consent, and that is what should be in real life.
I want to say they even said something like, this is not how I would behave in normal situations. And it was, it's funny, because I think as a fiction reader, and we are avid fiction readers, we should all go into fiction stories with that reminder that this is a fantasy world, and it doesn't have to and completely translate to the real world, and sometimes it won't. And yet I know that I have sat here in front of this camera on Kinky Book Club month and gone, oh, they didn't even talk about that. They didn't even do this. They didn't even do that. And part of it is because I think the way a story is sometimes laid out, you have an expectation that there should be something a little bit more realistic. That's what they're going for, is trying to show, quote, real, kinky relationships or power exchange. But sometimes I think it's in the style of the writing and the author and how I, as a reader, am relating to it, because I actually had to remind myself in some of the stories that, this is fantasy, and no matter how much you might want it, Kayla Lords, that is not how that would probably play out, no matter how hot you think that is. So let's get into some of our favorite stories.
Okay.
I have an awful memory when I'm reading anything, even and especially fiction. I can love a story. I can run up to you and go, I love this story. And you'll go, what was it about? And be like, ooh, there was some sex.
Yeah.
Can't tell you characters' names. So I take notes now when I know I have to talk about it.
Okay.
So there are 16 stories. I have them all here, all my notes. I'm going to pick out, I'm going to try and pick out 3 favorites out of the 16. And I'll start with my first, and then you go to your first, okay?
Okay.
Do it like that? Okay. So my first favorite was actually the first story. It's called The Diner on the Corner, and it's Sinclair in very sort of masculine getup, having their packer in, like in this diner, and it's like almost like a 50s aesthetic. And then their date, Shanna, or Shauna, I'm not sure how that name would be pronounced, is very femme, very 50s style get up. That's the whole aesthetic, and I could see it in my mind. And there was sexy foreplay and sexy sex stuff in the booth, and wasn't that sexy. But the line that stuck out, or the idea that stuck out to me from this one that I really liked, was even though Shanna was the submissive one and Sinclair was the one in control, the perspective was that either Sinclair was allowing it or Shannon was just trying to control everything and kind of not control like topping from the bottom, but like set things up and appear to be guiding and directing this encounter. And Sinclair was sort of like, yeah, I'll let you have that until the moment I'm ready to take back control. And it was all happening in a little diner booth. And I was like, oh, this is sexy. This is sexy. We came in hot. We started good. And I really liked that one. So what was one of your favorites?
For me, you know, like I said, I enjoyed all the stories. I really didn't find one that I was just like, you know, no, that's not. So it was really kind of hard to pick out some favorites from this. But the first one I enjoyed was Finding a Third.
Okay.
And I kind of like the way it was set up, because it was like, in a sense, you know, they were kind of playing Sinclair, and Sinclair was kind of playing them, and it all kind of...
Yeah, everybody was out for what they wanted, so the couple was like, oh, we're here to find a third, and Sinclair's like, I'm here to get laid. It's fine.
Right.
I find you attractive and you attractive, and sure, let's go. Yeah.
And the way the whole dynamic just played out throughout that story, I was just like, this is kind of cool. Even the end of the story, you know, the way they kind of went their ways, it fit for the way the story even began.
Yeah, it did. And actually, it's so funny because that story was good, but I found it dissatisfying because the connection Sinclair had with one of the partners, whose name I cannot remember right now, was really like sexy and fun, and I was like, ooh, let's explore it. But I did not read it as Sinclair having connection with the other partner called Eli. And that was a little like, there was something about it that was a little like, Eli felt kind of dismissive of Sinclair, like, yeah, you're here. It's almost like you're a non-entity. We're getting what we want from you, but it's consensual and it's mutual. Sinclair was getting what they wanted from the couple, but there was something that was dissatisfying about that to me at the end. I just was like, no. And I think it's because of how I am when it comes to sex. Like, I'm having sex with somebody I have a connection with. I don't have to be in love with them, but there's got to be a connection, and you got to want to have a conversation with me when we're done. Like, I don't want to be dismissed to be like, okay, you can go now. That's a personal preference. But in the moment, the distance between Eli and Sinclair is not quite having the connection that Sinclair had with the other partner. That was a little hot because there was a standoffishness between them, like they were competing doms. And I mean, that was a little hot. Yeah. I'll give you that one. That was a little hot. That was a little hot.
So, you know, yeah, that was definitely a good little story.
Okay. We're house divided. Okay, so I said 3 favorites, but I don't want to have to choose only 3. I'm that person. I'm a baby girl my way out of this one. The next one I really liked was called One Solid Yellow Aster. And it was the story of Sinclair working at a florist shop and delivering flowers. And they ended up delivering to somebody they'd kind of had a connection with ages ago named Rachel. And it was sort of a mystery because who sent this flower arrangement to Rachel? The card wasn't signed. I mean, you even get the detail of, we don't normally allow that because people are weird and creepy, but we allowed it this time. And then there's the chemistry between Sinclair and Rachel that's like felt immediately. And then there's these clues of, did Rachel orchestrate this? Because Sinclair's character, at least in the story, had been working at this, florist shop for years, since before, they met Rachel. And the hot sex, of course. But the thing that really got me was, who sent the bouquet? How did Sinclair end up at Rachel's apartment? Did Rachel do this? And you kind of, like, it's left with letting you decide as the reader what you think happened. And yes, I think Rachel sent that bouquet to herself so Sinclair wouldn't show up. I also think, wow, that's a lot to go through just to, like, let somebody know you're still interested. You could have just called them. Like, I'm pretty sure Sinclair would have been like, I'm coming, don't worry, I'll be right there. But I liked that one for the mystery aspect of it.
Okay.
Okay, what's another one that you liked?
The other one I liked was the Worst in Me.
Which one was that one? I have to check my notes.
That was the one on the train.
Oh yes, this is one where we're in agreement. I did like that one.
And again, I loved the interplay between the characters from the very beginning. You know, Sinclair looked at this person, and you know they were like, oh, you know, they're very chic, they're very glamorous. You know, got that whole debonair beauty about her, and you know, struggling with the luggage to get it put away, and the way the whole thing just develops.
Yeah, I mean, the sex plays out in a way that you're like, oh, that would never work in real life, which is the point of reading it in erotic fiction.
Right.
Because there's a look, there's a word, there's a lot of assumption, but next thing you know, Sinclair is like grabbing this woman and bending her over, and it's super hot sex. And I think what I enjoy most in all of these stories, including that one, is the time spent in Sinclair's head thinking, is this person really queer? Could I do this? Could I get away with touching myself while thinking about this person? Will they notice? You know, it's all of that mental stuff. And then the sex was good. Like that one, I'm with you. That sex was really hot. The character was bent straight forward over the train seat or whatever, legs together, just taken. And that's quite sexy. Thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, but no, I get why you would like that one. I liked that one too. Okay, so let me go to another one. There were a lot of good ones. Okay, so that was one I liked, and now I've got another one after it, and then I promise I'll try and follow my own rules. But the one called The Straight Girl at the Dyke Bar.
Ah, yeah.
I'm reading it going, I think I kind of want to be this girl. So I don't know if it's this specific character or it is the trope of this kind of character, but the way Sinclair kind of writes is, oh yeah, there's always a straight girl at the Dyke Bar, you know, flirting, buying drinks, like what are they doing? But this one follows them out into like the dirty alleyway. And they end up like fucking, and it was so hot, and it was also kind of gross because it's like, grab hold of the dumpster, and the straight girl's like, ew, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'd be like, ew too. And the sex is hot and like urgent, and like, it's not meaningless, but it's a little impersonal, but in that kind of sexy power exchangey kind of impersonal. I'm like, I think I want to be the straight girl at the Dyke Bar. And then, you know, the girl goes back in, and then Sinclair follows, like, a couple minutes later, and she's buying drinks at the bar and is going to buy Sinclair a whiskey or whatever it was, and I was like, I would feel out of place because that's not my space to be in, but also, I didn't want to be like her, I wanted to be her. Which probably means I need to finally one day go back in and, like, relook at things and stop just calling myself mostly straight. I'm pretty sure there's a better, I don't know, I don't have time to figure that out right now. But yeah, I liked that story. Okay, what's another favorite of yours?
Another favorite of mine, which I think is my biggest favorite in all these stories, is called All Five Senses. Okay. One thing that did it for me was it started in the library.
Yes.
So, you know, it's got to do with books. So, you know, that's a big bonus in my book right there.
You're on brand. It's fine.
The interaction between the two and the sex was off the charts for me.
Yeah, it was hot. It was definitely hot.
I'm going to tell you what really, really did it for me in this story. And you all may think this is a funny thing, but there is a part in the story where they're in I believe it's a Thai diner.
Yep. They went and got Thai after the library excursion.
And Sinclair ordered curry. And Sinclair was intending to leave, but the other, Juliet,
yep, that was her name.
Took to a table and they sat down to eat. And what really clinched this for me was when Sinclair in the story took a bite of the curry, the way they described the flavors and the way it hit in different layers and how it applied to the interaction with Juliet across the table.
I'd forgotten about that.
And I was just like, wow, this is just a little tidbit in here, but it spoke volumes to me. That little interaction, it was so well described with the flavor of the curry and the interaction and how it combined and brought all of it together. I was just like, wow.
I'll say this, for all of the stories, the titles always make sense. And then in some of the stories, All Five Senses being a perfect example of this, the way Sinclair wrote it, all 5+ senses are part of the writing, and it was so good to me. I could almost taste it, feel it, hear it, see it, sense it. And it was an immersive experience. Even though that's not one of my top, I still remember that because I kept thinking, yeah, all 5 senses indeed. And look, it's not just beautiful writing and really immersive and great storytelling. It's also, masturbation in the library. There's also some sexy fun times. Like, let us not get it mistaken here. It's still plenty of sex, but just the way it's written, it's almost like, okay, I'm going to read anything Sinclair writes at this point because the writing is so good. And if this is writing that was originally created, I'm sure it went through some editing process, but originally written back in 2007 to 2009, that's powerful writing. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to break my rule of 3 favorites and do 4 favorites because this last one, I was almost in tears reading it because it hit so personal to me.
Okay.
It was the very last story. It's called The Pink Dress. And it is about Sinclair and Emily. Now, in the story, Emily is a longtime kind of play partner. They fuck, they get kinky, they mix and mingle when they can. They're not necessarily exclusive to one another or monogamous, and it's not an all the time thing is the way it's sort of described in the story. But they get one another and they do stuff together. So in this story, it starts with Emily, who is described as just not, I think Sinclair said in the story, bigger than me, like this is not a small, petite person. And I immediately felt a kinship. And they're trying on in like a thrift store or whatever, this pink dress that's revealing and cute. And I think the way it was described was sort of high femme. And that's not Emily's style, her everyday like public persona style, but in a secret part of her heart, she wants to wear this. She loves this dress. It just lights her up. It's not her everyday all the time style, but it's a part of her. And I'm over here going, I totally get it. So then Sinclair sets up a whole special deal for Emily. So they're going to go out. They work with a friend of theirs who does drag and has all kinds of accessories and makeup and knows that stuff. They, I think, send Emily to like go get her hair and nails done and like gets like takes care of, I think, everything but like the lingerie. Like I think that was what Emily brought over. And there's kinky, sexy, fun times before they even go out. Of Sinclair definitely doming and being like, okay, put this on in this order, wear this, do that. And then the spanking and caning specifically for the purpose of you will feel this every time you sit down for the rest of the night. And I'm over here going, yes. And I love that part. And I'm loving this story. And then where it hit me right in the center of my ooey gooey heart, it made me go, hi, I feel seen. They go to the restaurant, and Emily, like, in the privacy of, like, Sinclair's apartment or her apartment or whoever it was, and when they're just alone together, Emily feels amazing and beautiful, and it's a little uncomfortable because it's unusual, but, like, ready to go. And then gets out in public, and Sinclair kind of describes her as almost shrinking and, like, starting to worry, what will people think? Are people, because people are looking, because Emily's got this updo and this crinoline skirt and just looks, like, not average, and people notice that. And Emily almost tries to shrink down into herself, and I'm over here not externally but internally I'm weeping because I'm like, I have been there. Every time I've worn a thing that makes me happy to wear but is outside of my comfort zone and people notice me for it, the thing I want them to do is to stop noticing me for it because now I am uncomfortable. Are they judging? Are they laughing? And what I love was Sinclair the whole time in that story is whispering to Emily, like, you look amazing, you look great, you know, they're staring because you look so good. Like, all that reassurance. But I was like, I am Emily. Emily is me. I totally feel that. The rest of the story was fine. It was sexy, good, you know, fuckery. That was fine. But it was that part that just caught me and held me. And I was like, because I could relate so well. The other thing I did like about that story a lot was because we're in Sinclair's head for it. They're like, why did I say we would go out? I just want to fuck her now. I just want to kind of wreck Emily because she looks so fucking hot. And here we are in a damn restaurant trying to be polite people. Why did I do this to myself? What did I order? I don't know. What did it taste like? I don't know. And there's a part of me that's like, okay, I prefer when at least fictional characters like maintain control. But also there's a part of me that's like, has that ever happened to JB? Was I so fierce and flawless and he was so turned on that he didn't know what he was even eating for dinner? I kind of like that idea. But yeah, the very final story was like, loved it. Yeah. Loved it for all of the things, for the fuckery, for the relating to Emily, and the understanding that I want to dress a certain way every once in a while, but oh my God, no, I don't, because then are people, you know, do I look foolish? Like, I totally got that. So, since I broke the rule, just, do you have another one?
I'm good.
Okay. That's why I only broke the rule today. So that was sweet.
You'll be punished later.
Yay! I'm here for it. So that was Sweet and Rough, Queer Kink Erotica, written and edited by Sinclair Sexsmith. Definitely check them out. We will link to the book, definitely, in the description box, and Sinclair's site if you want to read more of their writing and learn about what they do as a kink educator. I was scrolling through Twitter the other day, and as of the time of recording, they had been promoting like a bootblacking class that they do sometimes. So they've got all kinds of stuff. But this is kinky erotica written by a kinkster, which, especially when they're just a good writer, which Sinclair is almost always my favorite. Like, I can often tell when my kinky smut has not been written by a kinkster. Like, there's just a feel to it. This one was very immersive. I was able to just like be in Sinclair's head, and I fucking loved it. So yeah, that's it for this month. Next month we go back to nonfiction, and we go back out of our comfort zone like we did in the previous month, and we're reading Spirit of Desire by Lee Harrington. It's, I think, about the spirituality kind of part of kink. I hope I have a better experience with it than previous books we've read that have been like that.
I'm kind of interested to read it because it seems, in my perusing of different kink sites, it seems that people are looking at more of a spiritual side of.
There's a whole part of the community that relates to kink through spirituality in some way. I am a dirty rotten heathen who just doesn't relate to spirituality much at all. My biggest woo-woo is, yes, I think there's the universe, whatever that might mean, but I'm also open to having my mind changed and having my horizons broadened. So we'll see what happens next month. If you did read Sweet and Rough, what was your favorite story? What did you think of it? Let us know down below. And if you want to read it, check the description box. Links will be there. You can get the book. Yeah, that's it. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like it enough to want to come back for more, we don't always talk about books. We talk about Power Exchange too. Please consider subscribing.
And once you subscribe, ring that notification bell to get updates and new content.
Just do what Daddy says. And if you really like what we do, want to get access to more stuff you're not going to get anywhere else, including a discussion thread in a special Discord server about Kinky Book Club through Loving BDSM, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/KaylaLords. Bye.